Good afternoon, Saitlanders. How are you? We hope that you are very, very well. Firstly, some apologies. If I look bedraggled and I can see myself in the computer screen, this monitor here, I do look bedraggled. I can assure you, when I put this shirt on this morning, it was crisp, but it has been a hot and muggy, humid day here in Van der Kloof. I've got the air conditioning going full tilt, and I've got the water cooler, evaporative cooler they call it, the big fan with the water basin underneath. I hosed down the roof a little bit earlier because I've got a zinc plat roof, corrugated iron roof, and it didn't help. It helped, but not that much. So yeah, that's to do with me being bedraggled. And my second apology is for not producing a video yesterday afternoon. I promised you a couple of days ago that we were back in the swing of things and there'd be a super abundance of videos. And I stumbled at the first hurdle, as we say. And that was just because I fell violently ill late yesterday afternoon. I don't know what happened. Well, I know what happened, but I don't know how or why it happened. I suddenly became violently sick, and not to be too graphic, it carried on for a couple of hours. I haven't been that sick for as long as I can remember. Just went on and on. And in the evening I felt a little bit better. I went out for about 10, 15, 20, perhaps it was 25 minutes, but I don't think so. And I felt so grotty that I came back home. But when I woke up this morning, I was A-OK again. So hopefully we can make lots of videos every day for the foreseeable future. I'd like to talk to you briefly today because I have to save my voice. I've got an interview this evening, overseas foreign interview. I think between Nicoline, who works with me, and me, we can't figure out what these guys are trying to say to us. And it's English first language people. They're Americans. And the main dude is my friend. I mean, really, he's a friend of mine. A guy that I grew to know well in the USA, and I have the deepest affection for him. But yes, we can't get a straight answer about whether this is an interview or whether it is the setting up of the lines for an interview, because he and his colleagues seem to be saying both, and it can't be both at once. Anyway, so as I say, I'll just speak briefly about an alleged leak of an alleged speech given by Vladimir Putin on the 7th of January. When I say speech, I don't mean a public speech. Let's call it a private address. An address to nobody seems to know, except that it's from the 7th of January. Perhaps he was speaking to some soldiers at a medal ceremony. Perhaps he was speaking to his inner circle. Perhaps it was something that he said in a cabinet meeting or in his famous State Security Council, or to a bunch of businessmen at something like a cocktail party or similar function, where the who's who and the elites and the so on get together in times of war. Nobody knows. But it's worth mentioning that the leak has come through a source, a well-known conservative source that has over decades been a reliable and good source. It's reminiscent of the leak some months ago of the Rand Corporation report of, if I remember correctly, publication date 22nd of January, in which they spoke quite freely about the USA using Europe as an instrument to antagonize Russia, and in order to secure the USA's future as the leading economy and wealthiest nation and hegemon of the world. And at the time, a number of people said, oh, it must be, it's rubbish. It's rubbish. The language is too convenient. You know, it's too absolutely explicit about the nefarious intentions of the USA, and through the USA, NATO, again, through the USA because of its unbelievable influence, Europe. But I made the point at the time that it's interesting that nobody credible is denying it at all. So people said, well, perhaps they're just ignoring it. And I said, I don't think so. Time will tell, but it's my opinion that the powers that be are afraid to denounce the report as false for fear that the whole thing will be published. And what was leaked and published in that sense, you know, published to us, was the executive summary, some 13 pages. And lo and behold, there was no denunciation, and it is now accepted as true. This phenomenal admission of the malicious intentions of the USA in the Ukraine war and the events running up to the Ukraine war. And so I put it to you that so far I am satisfied that there is a strong possibility that the Vladimir Putin address or speech leak, or the speech itself, the contents of the speech, are true. Now, strong possibility, to me, possibility is always less than 50%. Beyond 50% is probability. So I would say to you that if I was a betting man, I would be working on odds of 3-2. I would be saying that this horse has a 40% chance. I'm pretty sure that it's got a 40% chance of coming in a winner. The question is, do I want to take that risk? Because it's not a 60 or 80 or 90 or 100. And that's what betting is all about. Because only one horse in 20 can win. Or 10 or 12 or 5 or whatever the case may be. So you're always weighing risk against risk. And the risk is always against you. Because it's only one in something. Or to put it another way, it's 10-1 or 8-1, just in the sheer number of horses. And then, of course, the professionals say, well, it's not exactly that because this horse is stronger and that horse is faster and this horse is fresher and that horse is younger and this horse knows the course better and this horse does better when the going is soft, in other words, when the soil is soggy. This horse is suited to longer distance, that to shorter distance. But in simple terms, it's out of 20 horses, it's 19 against 1, and nobody knows for sure which the one is. So, there I've done all of the hedging of bets possible. But I'm confident enough to make this video, and if it turns out to be wrong, to admit that I was wrong. The speech is ominous, or the address. The words that we've received are very few. It's a matter of 4 or 5 sentences. The gist of it is, I'm tired of everything. I've had enough of the West's lies, the satanic plans to depopulate the world, the malicious intentions of the West, so on and so forth. And he ends by saying, you are inviting the wrath of God and the wrath of me upon you. And one commentator, perhaps not the greatest of all commentators, but he is a man with a long track record. It's not everybody's cup of tea. He's not my cup of tea. But he is a man with a long track record of insight into the conservative condition, or the circumstances of the world in which the conservative finds himself. He said, reading between the lines, Vladimir Putin is saying that we're all going to die. I don't want to dramatize this, but I have to concur with him. It does seem as if Putin is issuing an ominous warning while at the end of his tether. He's had enough. He's keelful. He's sick in his sot. He's fed up. And so would you and I be if we were, whether you sympathize with the Russians or not. And many of you will know that I do not. I say a lot in favor of the Russian cause simply because it's true. When people say that, when they imply, for instance, that one army is this and one army is that, I'm always the first to say that Ukraine began this war with about 650,000 troops, and Vladimir Putin began it with perhaps as few as 90,000 troops, plus the militia of Donetsk and Luhansk, and later on the Wagner forces. It's a for instance. When people say, as a very famous channel on YouTube called Military History Visualized said, is this the end of the age of the tank? With the byline, the subscript, Russia's tanks being knocked out left, right and center, or words to similar effect. I produced a video saying they haven't yet introduced any 80 series tanks. In the first 3 months or 4 months of the war, we saw no 80 series tanks. I certainly didn't. In any of the videos, and there's a superabundance of such videos on Telegram. Tens of thousands of them, showing military equipment being railed in, being driven onto the battlefield, participating in battles, and in every other circumstance under war that you can imagine. Back at camp, people resting, doing reconnaissance with binoculars, hiding in the wood, you name it. We saw no T-80 tanks, much less T-90s or T-14 Armatas. Likewise, it's not by way of partisanship towards Russia that I say to you that you and I would also be fed up and sick and tired, even if we were in the wrong. If our Nord Stream 2 pipeline, the second one, had not been registered and licensed by the Germans after we built it at Germany's behest. We build the pipeline. Olaf Scholz comes into power late last year after winning the elections in September and promptly, categorically refuses to sign it off. We spent how many $1 billion for nothing? After you said you needed this? You made fools of us? Then Nord Streams 1 and 2 being sabotaged. Then an attempted sabotage on the Turk Stream pipeline. Then the blowing up of the Kerch Bridge. And not to mention the assassination of Dugina, the daughter of Dugin, Alexander Dugin's daughter. I forget her first name, but Dugina anyway. The feminine form of Dugin, she being a woman, Dugina. The attacks on one leg of Russia's nuclear triad, the two, or TU, I always say TU because if you say 295, it sounds like 295. The short form of Tupolev being 2, but I always say TU. Tu-95, long-range strategic bombers. That's an important thing, guys. That's the, pulling the tail of the lion, tugging the tail of the lion. Launching drones at a nuclear superpowers, one leg of a nuclear superpowers nuclear triad. You don't do that unless you're looking for big, big trouble. I think he's had about as much as he can take. And I think I wouldn't go so far as to suggest that I, speaking for myself, I can't say this is Saitlander's official policy. Obviously not. It's not. Mr. Miller. Excuse me. I beg your pardon, like a hiccup. Hiccup or a cough or something stuck halfway up my throat. Certainly doesn't have, at this point in time, some official stance on whether or not Russia is on the verge of launching nuclear missiles. So therefore, whatever I might say on that subject is quite clearly, conspicuously, overtly, my own opinion. Even I wouldn't say that I suspect in my private capacity that perhaps Putin is going to launch nuclear weapons. What I'm presenting you with is an apparent leak received by a source of terrific credentials over decades, which seems to reveal that Vladimir Putin is, to put it bluntly, gatvol. And he is now threatening the West, the globalists, Balenciaga. You know that this is all interconnected. You only have to listen to Mr. Miller's sermons, his twice daily sermons on Radio Groot Rivier, to get an excellent understanding of how much all of this stuff interlinks and interconnects, as revealed to us by Alois Erlmeyer, Umsina van Rensburg, Johanna Brandt, Alina Aiello, Barbara Wanger to a lesser extent, Balenciaga, Joe Biden sniffing little girls' hair, George Soros, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, who bragged in October or November, that by the end of December, the chip for implanting in people's brains, for which we conservatives have been called conspiracy theorists for at least 2 decades, that chip, he was quite categorical and I want to say adamant about it. Let's say categorical. It shall, as a matter of certain fact, be completed and perfected and ready by the end of December. And we shall have implanted it in our first subject, within the first 3 months of next year, being this year, 2023. All of this is what Vladimir Putin is talking about. And does that mean that he's going to drop the bomb or not? Nobody knows. But he certainly seems to be at the point where, in his public utterances anyway, he is expressing terminal exasperation before resorting to physical violence. Not that the special military operation is not that it isn't physical violence, but you know what I mean. Like a parent getting fed up and then lashing out. Had enough. Ladies and gentlemen, I put it to you. This is where I will stick my neck out, because I'm confident that although it's a slightly false comparison, it's only a slightly false comparison. And I'm very confident that I can say this reliably. I put it to you that this is an ominous, ominous foreword to the book that is 2023. And that we should all be preparing for terrible events in the world. I'm speaking now with particular reference to Russia. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to immediately make a follow-up video on a slightly related subject. Thank you. All right then, take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.